ship was old and tired. It had traveled through space for 3 long years, moving from star to star, system to system, finding nothing of importance. The crew was losing hope. Some had started to wonder if the mission was a mistake. But on the 437th day of their third year, everything changed. Park was sleeping in his small cabin when the alarm went off. It was not the emergency alarm that meant danger. It was the discovery alarm that meant something interesting had been found. He jumped out of bed, pulled on his uniform, and ran to the bridge. The bridge was already full of crew members. They were all looking at the main screen, and they were all silent, pushed through the crowd to get a better view. When he saw what was on the screen, he understood why no one was talking. It was a ring, but not a small ring like the ones people wore on their fingers. This ring was enormous. It was bigger than any space station humanity had ever built. It was bigger than most moons. It flowed in the darks of space, slowly spinning around a dead star that gave off only a weak red light. What is that? Asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. The chief engineer stepped forward. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been the first to see the object on the center. Do not know, Captain, she said. The computer says the structure is very old, millions of years old, maybe more. The metal it is made from does not match anything in our records, and there are symbols on the surface, some kind of writing. There at the screen. The symbols mentioned were visible even from the distance. They covered the surface of the ring like decorations on a cake. They glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Is it dangerous? I asked. We do not detect any weapons, relied. No shields, no active defenses. It seems to be waiting. About what to do? He could report the discovery to Earth and wait for instruction. That was the safe choice, the proper choice. But it would take weeks for the message to reach Earth and weeks more for a response to come back. And something about this object made him feel that waiting was wrong. It had been waiting for millions of years. It deserved attention now. It's closer, he ordered. Slowly and carefully, full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about that thing before we touch it. The ship moved forward. As they got closer, the true size of the ring became clear. Their ship, the Horizon's Edge, was considered a large vessel by human standard. It had a crew of 200 and could travel between stars without refueling. But next to the ring, it looked like a toy. The ring could have swallowed 1,000 ships like theirs and still had room for more. Symbols said as they approached, they are not just decoration, look at this. Put a closer image on the screen. The symbols were arranged in patterns, mathematical patterns, sequences that repeat in ways that suggested meaning. There's a language, realized. Someone built this and they left instruction. Warnings, add quietly. Found an opening in the ring's surface. It was clearly designed as an entrance, large enough for ships to pass through. Ordered a team to prepare for exploration. He would lead the team himself. And is that wise? His first officer asked. If something happened to you. If something happens to me, you will take command and report everything to Earth, interrupted. But I did not travel for 3 years to sit on the bridge while others make history. I'm going. The exploration team consisted of 6 people. Led them. Came to study the technology. 4 security officers came to protect everyone. They wore spacesuits and carried tools, weapons, and center. The side of the ring was even more impressive than that side. The corridors were enormous, designed for beings much larger than human. The walls were covered with more of the glowing symbols. The air was breathable, kept fresh by systems that still worked after millions of years. We built this, they built it to last, said as they walked. Her voice was full of wonder. Look at the construction. No rust, no decay. The power systems are still running. This is engineering beyond anything we have ever seen. Walked for hours, mapping the corridors, taking samples, recording everything. They found rooms filled with strange machines. They found what looked like living quarters, though the furniture was too big for humans. They found screens that displayed data in the alien language. Then they found the heart of the station. It was a vast chamber at the center of the ring. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared in darkness. In the middle of the chamber, flowing in empty air, was a sphere of pure energy. It glowed with white light, and beams of the same light connected to the walls in every direction. What is that? One of the security officers asked. I was already scanning it. Her face showed shock and excitement. It is a power source, but not like any power source I have ever seen. The energy readings are impossible. There is enough power here to run a planet. Close to the sphere, he could feel warmth coming from it, even through his spacesuit. It hummed with a sound that was almost like music. Someone built this for a reason, he said. A very important reason. We need to find out what that reason was. Answer would come later. But for now, standing in this ancient chamber felt something he had not felt in years. He felt small, not in a bad way. Small in the way that reminded him how big the universe was, how much there was still to discover, how much humanity still had to learn. Had found something extraordinary, something that would change everything. Just did not know how much yet. The exploration of the ring station continued for 3 weeks. Every day, teams went out and came back with new discoveries. Every night, and her engineers tried to understand what they had found. Slowly, piece by piece, the picture became clearer. Beings who built the station were not like humans. They were larger for one thing. The doorways and furniture suggested creatures at least 3 meters tall. They had more than 2 arms based on the tools they left behind. And they were old. Very, very old. Calling them the architects, the name spread through the crew until everyone used it. Architects were scientists, explained during a meeting in the captain's quarters. A holographic model of the station floated above the table. Everything we have found points to this. Research laboratories, data storage, observation equipment. They were not warriors or traders. They were seekers of knowledge. Nod slowly, and what were they seeking? That is the interesting part. Touched the hologram, and it changed to show the central chamber with the glowing sphere. This is not just a power source. It is a tool, a very specific kind of tool. Paused, making sure everyone was paying attention. It is a gravity collider. Words meant nothing to most of the crew, but had studied enough physics to understand the basic idea. They were manipulating gravity. More than that, they were compressing it, focusing gravitational waves into extremely small spaces. Eyes were bright with excitement. Do you understand what that means? Gravity is the fundamental force of the universe. It shapes everything. Planets, stars, galaxies. By controlling gravity, they could study the deepest secrets of reality itself. Would they use it for anything else? Asked, besides research. I do not know, maybe. The focusing mechanism is very precise. In theory, you could aim it at something, but why would you? The architects were scientists. They had no interest in weapons or destruction. They just wanted to understand. That information away for later. He was a practical man. Scientists saw tools for learning. Soldiers saw tools for fighting. He was not a soldier exactly, but he knew how people thought. If the machine could do more than research, someone would eventually figure that out. Question of what happened to the Arctics remained a mystery. They found no bodies anywhere in the station, no signs of battle or disaster. The Arctics had simply left or disappeared. The station was abandoned but not destroyed. Everything was in its place waiting for someone to return. They finished their research, one crew member suggested. They learned what they wanted to learn and moved on. They died out somewhere else, another said. Disease or war or something we cannot imagine. They're still out there, a third added quietly, watching us. Thought made everyone uncomfortable. They worked faster after that, trying to learn as much as they could before anything changed. The 19th day made a breakthrough. She figured out how to access the Arctic's computer systems. The language was still incomprehensible, but the mathematical structures were universal. Numbers were numbers, no matter who used them. With that foundation, she slowly decoded the basic function. Show you something, she told that evening. They stood together in the central chamber, the glowing sphere hung above them. Watch. The panel on the wall, the sphere pulsed, and suddenly the air was filled with images. Stars and galaxies and things could not name. Data scrolled past in alien symbols. The display was beautiful and overwhelming. This is their research, explained. Years of it, many centuries. They were mapping the structure of space-time itself, looking for patterns, trying to understand how the universe was put together at the deepest level. The image flowed past. He understood almost nothing of what he was seeing, but he understood the feeling behind it. Curiosity, wonder, the same feelings that had driven humans to leave Earth and explore the stars. We're like us, he said quietly. Different bodies, different technology, but the same hearts. That is what makes this sad. They did all this work, made all these discoveries, and then they vanished. All this knowledge just sitting here, waiting for someone to find it. He found it, said, that has to count for something. The 21st day made the decision to send a message to Earth. He had gathered enough information to make a report. The message would take weeks to arrive, but Earth needed to know what they had found. Recorded the message himself, sitting in his cabin, speaking carefully into the camera. Captain Park of the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. We have discovered an alien structure of enormous size and power in the 442 system. The builders, whom we call the Arctics, appear to be extinct or departed. Their technology is millions of years ahead of our own. Most importantly, they left behind a device we believe is capable of manipulating gravitational forces. We are continuing our investigation. Please advise on next steps. Sent the message and waited. There was nothing else to do. The distances of space made fast communication impossible. He would have to use his own judgment until instructions arrived. Was not the only one who knew about the discovery. Space was full of eyes and ears. Other species had sensors that reached far beyond human technology. They watched the stars for signs of anything unusual, and the activation of an ancient Arctic station was definitely unusual. The 23rd day, 3 ships appeared at the edge of the system. They were not human ships. They were sleek and silver, with curves that no human engineer would design. They broadcast a message on all frequencies. Vessel, you have trespassed on council property. You will surrender the Arctic station immediately. You have no right to touch things you do not understand. To the message with a cold feeling in his stomach. He knew about the Galactic Council. Every human did. 12 alien species who had been traveling through space for thousands of years. They saw humans as children, newcomers who needed to be watched and controlled. Had hoped they would not notice. He had been wrong. This is Captain Park, he replied carefully. We discovered the station through legitimate exploration. We claim no council property. We are simply conducting research. Response came quickly. The voice on the other end was cold and dismissive. Claim nothing. Humans have no claims. You are guests in the galaxy and you will behave as such. Surrender the station or face consequences. That is true. They were watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about his orders, his duty, his responsibility to keep everyone safe. He thought about the Arctics, who had built something beautiful and left it behind. He thought about humanity, always being told what they could and could not do. No, he said into the communication channel. We found the station. It belongs to us now. Cut the transmission before they could respond. The 3 alien ships did not attack. They stayed at the edge of the system, watching, waiting. More ships joined them over the next few days. Soon there were 10, then 20, then 50. The consortium was gathering its forces. Earth, the message from Captain arrived and created chaos. The government held emergency meetings. Military leaders argued with diplomats. Scientists demanded access to the discovery. Everyone had an opinion about what should be done. Minister sat at the center of it all. She was 63 years old with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. She had spent her entire career protecting humanity from threats both human and alien. This was the biggest threat she had ever faced. The Council is united against us, one of her advisors reported. All 12 species have condemned our action. They say the Arctic station is protected heritage that belongs to all civilized species. They demand we surrender it immediately. And if we refuse, ask calmly. Now sanctions, trade blockades, and possibly, the advisor hesitated, military action. The room was silent. Everyone knew what military action from the Galactic Council would mean. Humanity had a small fleet of exploration and defense vessels. The Council had thousands of warships built over. It would not be a war. It would be a slaughter. They have given us 30 days, another advisor added. An ultimatum, surrender the station or face consequences. Up and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Seoul spread out before her, millions of people going about their daily lives. They did not know about the crisis. They did not know that their future was being decided in this room. What do we know about this Arctic station? She asked without turning around. Scientist stepped forward. His name was, and he was the leading expert on gravitational physics in the entire human civilization. He was thin, with messy hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. He looked nervous, as scientists usually did when surrounded by military and political leaders. On Captain's reports, it is a gravity collider, explained. A device for compressing and manipulating gravitational waves. The technology is far beyond anything we possess. If we could study it properly, it could advance our understanding of physics by centuries. Could it be used as a weapon? Asked. I had not considered that. The Arctics use it purely for research, but theoretically any tool can be turned into a weapon. A hammer can build a house or break a skull. It depends on who holds it. To face the room. Then that is our answer. We will not surrender the station. We will study it. We will learn its secrets, and if necessary, we will use those secrets to defend ourselves. Room erupted in protests. Advisors shouted about the risks. Diplomats warned about alienating the council forever. Military leaders pointed out that they could not win a direct confrontation. Waited until the noise died down. Then she spoke again, and her voice was cold as ice. Flynn to humanity begged for scraps at the galactic table for 40 years. I have watched us bow and apologize and accept whatever the older species decided to give us. And where has it gotten us? We are still newcomers, still children, still pets who are tolerated but never respected. Placed her hands on the table and leaned forward. Station is our chance to change that. For the first time we have something they want, something they fear. We would be fools to give it up without a fight. Decision was made that night. A secret project was authorized, Singularity. The best scientists, engineers, and military minds would be sent to the 442 system. They would learn everything about the gravity collider, and they would find a way to use it. He was selected to lead the scientific team. He was given unlimited resources and one simple order: figure out what the machine could do and how humanity could use it. A researcher approached Sidwin gave him the assignment. I study theories, I write papers, I am not a weapon developer. Learn to be one, replied without sympathy. Your species needs you, doctor, will you help us or not? About his life, his quiet office, his peaceful research, the comfortable routine he had built over decades, all of it seemed very far away now. Well, help, he said finally, but I want it recorded that I do this under protest. The architects built something beautiful. I do not want to destroy that beauty. The protest is noted, said, now get to work. Transport ships left Earth a week later. They carried equipment, supplies, and personnel. Among them was, staring out a window at the stars, wondering what he had agreed to. While at the 442 system, Captain prepared for the arrivals. The alien fleet watching them had grown to over 100 ships. They made no aggressive moves, but their presence was a constant reminder that time was running out. 3 days remaining, reported during their daily briefing. They keep sending demands, always the same words: surrender or suffer. What do you think we should do? Asked. Quiet for a moment. She looked out at the alien ships on the tactical display, then at the ancient ring station that had become their responsibility. I think we should fight, she said finally. Not because I want to, not because I think we will win, but because giving up without trying is not who we are. Humans have always fought for what they believe in, even when the odds were impossible. Slowly, he agreed with her, though he would never say it out loud. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth dying for. This ancient station built by curious minds millions of years ago was one of those things. Transport ships arrived 3 days later, stepped off the first one and immediately started asking questions. Where was the collider? How did it work? What had they learned so far? Took his hand and smiled. Welcome to 442, Doctor. I hope you brought your thinking cap. You are going to need it. Race against time had begun. 20 days remained before the Council's ultimatum expired. 20 days to unlock the secrets of a million-year-old machine. 20 days to find a way to save humanity from forces far greater than itself. Red had never seen anything like the gravity collider. He stood in the central chamber, staring up at the glowing sphere, and felt like a child looking at the ocean for the first time. The scale of it was overwhelming. The beauty of it was heartbreaking. Max alone would take decades to fully understand, he whispered. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. This is not just technology, this is art. He stood beside him, watching his reaction with a small smile. She remembered feeling the same way when she first entered this room. The architects had not just built a machine. They had built a monument to curiosity itself. We do not have decades, she reminded him gently. We have 18 days. Still staring at the sphere, then we had better start working. The scientific team settled into a brutal routine. They worked in shifts around the clock, never stopping, never resting. Drove himself harder than anyone. He barely slept, barely ate. He lived on coffee and determination. First week was spent just understanding the basics. How did the collider generate power? How did it focus the gravitational waves? What were the limits of its capabilities? Each question led to 10 more questions. The architect technology was so advanced that even simple concepts required hours of study. To be invaluable, he was a systems engineer, quiet man who spoke little but understood machines in a way that seemed almost magical. While others struggled with the alien interfaces, found patterns. He built translation programs that let human computers communicate with architect systems. He mapped power flows and control pathways. Without him, they would have been lost. Collider operates on principles we barely understand, explained during one late session. But the underlying physics is universal. Gravity works the same everywhere. Mathematics works the same everywhere. If we focus on what we know, we can figure out the rest. And it was also part of the team. She was not a scientist, but she had been assigned as the tactical advisor. Her job was to think about military applications while others focused on scientific understanding. Tell me the focusing mechanism again, she asked one day. Pulled up a holographic display. This is how the architects aimed the gravitational beam. They could target any point in space with extreme precision. In their research, they used it to study distant objects without disturbing them. The display carefully, her eyes were sharp, calculating. But the beam itself has an effect on whatever it hits, it compresses things. At full power, the beam could compress matter to incredible densities. The architects used this to study exotic physics, black hole formation, space-time curvature, things that normally require dying stars. Would it compress a ship? Asked quietly. The room went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at her. It went pale. I suppose so, in theory, but that is not what it was designed for, the architects never. I'm not asking about the architects, interrupted. Her voice was calm but firm. I'm asking about physics. If you aimed the beam at an enemy vessel, what would happen? Not answer for a long moment. He looked at the sphere, at the beautiful machine the architects had built. He thought about his approach to Minster. He thought about the fleet gathering outside, growing larger every day. He thought about what would happen to humanity if they lost this fight. Crush the ship, he finally said. The gravitational forces would compress the hull. The crew would be killed instantly. The ship would collapse into a ball of compressed metal and then explode. The sudden release of energy would be devastating. Out slowly, that is our weapon. The second week was different. The folks shifted from pure understanding to practical application. How could they modify the collider to work as a weapon? What changes were needed? What problems had to be solved? Were main problems. The collider was designed to fire slowly and carefully with precise calibration for each shot. They needed it to fire quickly and repeatedly. The power systems were designed for sustained low-level operation, not burst firing. They had to be refigured. The targeting systems were designed for static objects, not moving ships. They had to be completely rebuilt. On the targeting problem, he worked without sleep for 3 days straight, building new algorithms, testing them, discarding failures, and starting again. When he finally emerged from his workshop, he had a solution. Give you accuracy within 10 meters at 1 light-second distance, he announced. Made better. The math is solid. The architect system can handle the calculation. The power distribution. She rerouted systems, bypassed safe protocols, and found ways to channel more energy to the focusing mechanism. It was dangerous work. Several times, she nearly caused overloads that could have destroyed the entire station, but she succeeded. Can fire at full power maybe 10 times, she reported. After that, the strain will be too much. The station will start breaking apart. Shots, Kevin said when he heard this. He was attending all the briefings now, watching the progress with a mix of hope and concern. That is not many against a fleet of 200. Shot can destroy multiple ships if they are grouped together, pointed out. They always attack information. They line up their ship perfectly. If we hit them right, one shot could take out a dozen vessels. When they figure out what is happening, when they scatter. Mild coldly, then we hit them before they scatter. We make the first shots count. Day 12, they ran their first test. A small asteroid was selected as the target, floating several thousand kilometers from the station. Everyone gathered on the command bridge to watch. Hands were shaking as he entered the final commands. This was the moment of truth. Either the weapon would work or it would not. Either they would have a chance against the alien fleet or they would have nothing. Firing in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the button. A moment nothing seemed to happen. The screen showed the asteroid gray and unchanged. Then it began to shrink. Slowly at first, then faster. The rock compressed, folded in on itself, grew smaller and smaller. In seconds it went from the size of a building to the size of a car to the size of a ball. Then it exploded. Light was blinding. The shockwave destroyed observation drones thousands of kilometers away. When the screens cleared, there was nothing left but dust and a small chunk of glowing metal where the asteroid had been. No one spoke, no one moved, they just stared at what they had done. Finally broke the silence. It works. Slumped in his chair, he should have felt proud. He had accomplished something incredible, but instead he felt empty. He had taken a tool of knowledge and turned it into a tool of death. The architects would not have approved. He was not sure he approved either. There was no going back now. The weapon existed. The fleet was coming, and humanity would fight with everything it had. News of the successful test spread through the stadium quickly. Everyone had seen the flash of light. Everyone had felt the shockwave through the stadium structure, and everyone understood what it meant. Had a weapon, but having a weapon and winning a battle were two very different things. Called a meeting of all senior officers. The conference room was crowded, filled with people who had been working without rest for nearly 2 weeks. They were tired, stressed, and afraid, but there was also something else in their eyes. Hope, maybe, or defiance. We have 8 days until the council's deadline began. Our scouts report that the fleet has grown to nearly 200 ships. They are waiting for the deadline to expire. When it does, they will attack. Hold up a tactical display showing the system. The Arctic station flowed at the center. The human fleet, 12 frigates and 4 destroyers, was positioned around it. The fleet was a wall of red dots at the edge of the map. Cannot win a direct fight, continued. Our ships are outmatched in every way. Speed, firepower, armor. If we go head-to-head with them, we will be destroyed in minutes. We do not go head-to-head, Lieutenant said. She stood up and walked to the display. We use the collider, we let them come to us, and we hit them before they know what is happening. The display and the formation expanded. They always attack the same way. They arrange their fleet in a grid pattern, very organized, very disciplined. Each ship has a specific position, a specific role. They have used the tactic for 1,000 years. It has worked for 1,000 years, pointed out. No one has ever had a weapon like ours. Highlighted the center of the formation. Look at this. Their command ships cluster in the middle, protected by layers of escorts. This is the strongest part of their formation, but also the most concentrated. If we can hit it with the collider, we could destroy their entire command structure in one shot. Is her hand? That assumes they stay in formation long enough for us to fire. The collider takes time to aim and charge. If they see the beam coming, they will scatter. Will not see it coming, said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He rarely spoke in meetings, preferring to let others take the lead. The gravitational beam is invisible. No light, no energy signature. By the time they realize what is happening, it will be too late. Exactly, we get one surprise attack, May 2. After that, they will adapt. They will spread out, change their tactics, but by then we will have already done massive damage. And our ships asked, what is their role? Your fleet forms a defensive ring around the station. Your job is to keep the enemy busy, distract them, buy time for the collider to fire. You will not defeat them. You just have to slow them down. There was silence in the room. Everyone understood what was really saying. The fleet was a sacrifice. Many of those ships would not survive. The crews knew they might be giving their lives to buy a few extra minutes. Lead the fleet myself, said after a long moment. From the horizon's edge, the crew has been with me from the beginning. They deserve to be at the front when the end comes. That is not necessary, his first officer protested. You should stay on the station where it is safer. Now this is safe, looked around the room at the faces of his people. I have asked my crews to die for humanity. The least I can do is die with them. Next 8 days were filled with preparation. Ships were repaired and armed. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Crews drilled combat scenarios until they could respond in their sleep. The station and his team continued refining the weapon. Every small improvement could mean the difference between victory and defeat. They optimized the targeting algorithms. They boosted the power output. They tested everything again and again. Left the central chamber. He slept on a cot in the corner, waiting at all hours to check readings and run calculations. Sometimes, late at night, he would stand alone under the glowing sphere and talk to it as if it could hear him. Sorry, he whispered one night. This is not what you were made for. The beings who built you would be ashamed of what I have done, but I do not know what else to do. My people are in danger. I have to help them. The sphere pulsed gently, its light never changing. It had no answer to give. It was just a machine, ancient and powerful and indifferent. What humans chose to do with it was not its concern. Day 28, the fleet began to move. 200 ships left their holding position and started advancing toward the station. Their formation was perfect, just as had predicted. A wall of destruction coming to claim what they believed was theirs. Commander sent one final message. His face appeared on screens throughout the station and the human fleet. He was tall, with gray skin and 4 cold eyes that showed no mercy. He said, your time has ended. You were offered peace and you chose war. Now you will pay the price. Surrender your crews and your station and you may live as slaves. Resist and you will die as fools. Watch the message on the bridge of the horizon's edge. When it ended, he turned to his communication officer. When to channel all frequencies. Officer nodded. Channel open, sir. Deep breath. He thought about his family back on Earth, his parents who had told him to follow his dreams among the stars, his sister who had cried when he left and made him promise to come home. He might never see them again, But some things were more important than one person's life. He said, his voice steady. This is Captain Park of the Human Vessel Horizon Edge. We have received your message. Here's our response. Paused, letting the sign stretch. Come and take it. Cut the transmission. On him, his crew smiled grimly. They knew what was coming. They knew many of them would not survive, but they were not afraid. They were ready. The station watched the fleet advance. Her hands rested on the firing controls, steady and sure. She had trained her whole life for the moment. Everything she knew, everything she had learned came down to these next few hours. Listen to optimal range, she asked. 6 hours, replied, maybe less if they accelerate. 6 hours. That was all the time they had left. 6 hours to rest, to prepare, to say goodbye to the life they had known. 6 hours passed like minutes. There was too much to do, too many things to check, too many goodbyes to say, and then suddenly the waiting was over. Fleet entering Webb's range, the tactical officer announced. Sat in his command chair on the horizon's edge, watching the wall of red dots on his screen grow closer. 200 ships, more firepower than humanity had ever faced, coming straight at them like a wave about to crash on a beach. Ships hold position, he ordered. Do not fire until they do. Let them think we are afraid. Human fleet weighed 16 ships against 200. It was madness. It was suicide. But it was also the only chance they had. Fleet stopped just outside optimal weapon range. They were in no hurry. They had all the time in the universe. The human ships were trapped. The station was defenseless. Victory was certain. Or so they thought. The station lieutenant watched the enemy formation through enhanced sensors. They had arranged themselves exactly as she predicted. A grid of ships, 3 layers deep with the command vessels in the center. Safe, perfect targets. Collider is charged and ready, roared. His voice was quiet, almost sad. Targeting solution is locked. Wait said, not yet. Let them fire first. Let them think they have already won. Commander gave the order. The first volley erupted from the alien fleet, bright streaks of energy cutting through the darkness. They hit 2 human frigates simultaneously. Ships explode. Fire and debris scattered across space. Crews died in seconds, their last moments filled with light and heat and terror. Names that would be remembered forever. Lives that ended too soon. Return fire, shouted. All ships engage. The fleet responded. Their weapons were smaller, weaker, but they fired with everything they had. Beams of light streaked toward the enemy formation. Most were absorbed by alien shields. A few made it through, leaving small marks on hulls that could take much heavier punishment. Advanced. Another volley. Another human ship destroyed. Then another. The formation tightened as the aliens pressed forward, eager to finish the battle quickly. Now said, he pressed the firing button. Collider activated. Deep within the station, the glowing sphere pulsed with sudden intensity. Energy flowed through systems that had weighed millions of years for the moment. The gravitational beam lanced out, invisible and unstoppable. Struck the center of the formation. Command ships, the largest and most important vessels in the enemy fleet, began to collapse. Their crews had no time to understand what was happening. One moment, everything was normal. The next moment, gravity itself turned against them. Ships crumbled, hulls designed to withstand any weapon folded like paper. Decks compressed together, bodies were crushed, reactors ruptured, and then in a flash of released energy, the ship exploded. Black wave hit the surrounding escorts. 12 more ships were torn apart by the force. Debris flew in every direction, smashing into other vessels, causing secondary explosion. In seconds, the Perk formation had a massive hole in its center. 15 ship destroyed with one shot. Alien fleet froze. For the first time in 1,000 years, they did not know what to do. Their commanders were dead. Their formation was broken. Something impossible had just happened. Fire again, ordered. Second shot caught a cluster of ships on the left flank. They had bunched together in confusion, looking for leadership that no longer existed. 8 more ships collapsed and exploded. The panic truly began. The remaining ships scattered in every direction, trying to escape something they could not see or understand. Discipline collapsed. Officers screamed orders that no one followed. Ships crashed into each other as they fled. Fire again. Third shot was harder to aim. The turrets were moving, spreading out, but its algorithms were good. 6 ships died. Fire again. Fourth shot, 7 ships. Now they were in full retreat. Ships jumped to fat and light speed without waiting for orders. Others fled toward the edge of the system, desperate to get away from the invisible death. The formation that had seemed so invincible was now a scattered mob of terrified survivors. The battle was not over. Some commanders kept their heads. Their crews regrouped their ships and turned their weapons on the real target, the station. First shots hit the ring structure, exploded and tore through ancient quarters. Systems that had worked for millions of years failed in seconds. Fire spread through sections that had never known damage before. Taking hits, roared. Her voice was strained but controlled. Port second is damaged. Power fluctuations in the secondary grid. And we still fired, demanded. But maybe only twice more. The strain is getting worse. Look at the tactical display. 63 enemy ships destroyed, but more than 100 remained and some of them were fighting back. The human fleet was down to 9 ships, desperately trying to protect the station from all sides. Fire again, she decided. Fifth shot struck a group of ships that had been organizing a counterattack. 9 more destroyed. The survivors scattered, their courage broken. The horizon's edge, Captain watched the battle unfold on his screens. His ship had taken damage. 3 of his crew were dead. Smoke filled the quarters, but they were still fighting. The tactical officer shouted, enemy ships are retreating. Multiple faster-than-light signalers. They are leaving the system. But at the display, the red dots were disappearing one by one as ships fled the battlefield. What remained was chaos and debris and the slowly spinning ring of the Arctic station. How many left, he asked. Only 70 ships still in the system, but they are not attacking, they are waiting. Waiting to see what would happen next, waiting to see if the humans had any more surprises. The battle was not over, but the initiative had shifted. For the first time, they were afraid. In the channel to the station, Lieutenant, status report. Voice came back tired but triumphant. We have fired 5 shots, we have made 2 or 3 left. The station is damaged but operational, and Captain, we are winning. It was a word I had not expected to use today. He looked out the viewport at the debris field that now filled the system. Piece of ships, alien and human, flowed together in the darkness. The cost of this victory was written in metal and blood. They were still alive, they were still fighting, and the enemy was running. Remaining ships held their position at the edge of the battlefield. They did not attack, they did not retreat, they just waited, watching the human fleet and the damaged station with sensors that could detect every detail. Used the pause to assess the situation. 7 human ships lost, Dozens of crew members dead. The Horizon's edge itself had taken heavy damage, with entire sections venting atmosphere into space. His people were exhausted, wounded, and running low on ammunition. They were still here, they were still fighting, and that was more than anyone had expected. What are they waiting for? Asked over the communication channel. She was on the station, helping repair systems that had been damaged in the attack. Enforcements maybe, he replied, or new orders. Their command structure was destroyed. They do not know what to do without someone telling them. We should hit them again, before they reorganize. She shook her head. She was standing over the collider controls, watching power readings that had become increasingly unstable. We have 2 shots left, maybe 3 if we are lucky. If we use them now and miss, we have nothing. We need to wait for the right moment. And I'll continue for 3 hours. 3 hours of tension and exhaustion and fear. 3 hours of watching the enemy and wondering what would happen next. A new contact appeared on the centers. Ships incoming, the tactical officer reported. 10, no 20, coming from the hour system. Sank, reinforcements. They had called for help and help had arrived. The remaining 70 ships now had 20 more to join them. The odds had gotten worse. Then the identification codes came through. Captain, those are not ships. They appeared at the display. The new contacts were marked with different colors, different signatures. They were from other council species. All members of the Galactic Council, all theoretically enemies. They were not joining the formation. They were positioning themselves between the and the system exit, blocking the retreat. Communication came through. The face on the screen was not. It was with blue skin and 3 eyes that held an expression could not read. Vessel, they said, we are observers from the Galactic Council. We are here to ensure fair conduct. Laughed, fair conduct. They were here because they had seen what the collider could do. They were afraid, and afraid people did strange things. Welcome to the 440U system, he replied carefully. We appreciate the Council's interest in fair conduct. Nod. The consortium has suffered significant losses. Their fleet commander is dead. Their authority in this sector is compromised. The Council is reviewing the situation. Understood what was really being said. The Council had sent them to take the station. They had failed. Now the Council was distancing itself from the failure, pretending it had never fully supported the attack. Politics. Even in the middle of a battle, there was always politics. What do you want? Asked directly. Want peace, they said. The Council does not wish further conflict. We propose an immediate ceasefire. All hostilities will end. They will withdraw. The station will remain in human hands. Negotiations for future arrangements will take place through proper diplomatic channels. It was a surrender, wrapped in diplomatic language and face-saving phrases, but a surrender nonetheless. The Council was offering to end the fight because they were afraid of what would happen if it continued. At his battered fleet, at the damaged station, at the debris field that held the bodies of his fallen crew, they had won, but the cost had been terrible. We'll need to consult with my government, he did finally, but I am prepared to accept a ceasefire, on one condition. Name it. Bodies of our fallen. We want them recovered, every single one. They died defending the station and they deserve to be brought home. Not slowly, that is acceptable. Ceasefire took effect within the hour. The remaining ships, escorted by the Council observers. The human fleet stood down, finally able to rest after hours of combat. And on the station, the collider fell silent, its work done for now. Through the corridors of the Horizon's edge, checking on his crew. Some were treating wounds, others were making repairs. A few were just sitting, staring at nothing, processing what they had been through. Found in the engineering section. She was covered in grease and burn marks, but she was smiling. We did it, she said when she saw him. I did not think we would, but we did. At a cost, replied quietly, a heavy cost. No, her smile faded. I will remember them, every name, every face, for as long as I live. The station sat alone in the central chamber. The glowing sphere hummed above him, unchanged by everything that had happened. It had existed for millions of years. It would exist for millions more. The battle, the death, the victory were just a brief moment in its endless existence. I do not know if we did the right thing, he said to the empty room. We survived, but we also showed the galaxy what we are capable of. What we are willing to do. Is that good or bad? I do not know. With him there an hour later, she sat down beside him without speaking. They watched the sphere together in silence. Saved us, she finally said. Whatever else you think about yourself, remember that. Without the weapon you built, we would all be dead. The architects would not have approved. Architects are not here. We are, she put a hand on his shoulder. We have to live with what we did, good and bad together. That is what it means to be human. Not answer, but something in his posture relaxed slightly. The weight on his shoulders was still there, but maybe it was a little lighter. Recovery operations began the next day. Human ships moved through the debris field, collecting the remains of the fallen. It was slow, sad work. Each body that was found was identified, catalogued, and prepared for the long journey home. The dead were left where they fell. Perhaps their own people would come for them eventually. Perhaps not. The galaxy could be cold that way. As the work continued, messages arrived from Earth. Congratulations. Relief. Joy. The news of the victory had spread faster than anyone expected. Humanity had faced an impossible enemy and won. It was a story that would be told for generations. On the ships in the station, the people who had lived through it did not feel like celebrating. The months that followed the battle were filled with change. Diplomats traveled between star systems, negotiating treaties and agreements that would have been impossible before. The Galactic Council, once so dismissive of humanity, now treated Earth as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Minister led the negotiations personally. She was 70 years old now, gray-haired and tired, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She sat across from representatives of all 12 council species and spoke with the confidence of someone who knew she held the advantage. Humanity demands full recognition as a sovereign power, he said during the final session. Full voting rights in the council, full access to trade routes and resources, and full control over the 442 station and all Arctic technology found there. Council representatives exchanged nervous glances. These were demands that would have been laughed at just months ago, but things had changed. The weapon the humans had built changed everything. His terms are significant, the representative said carefully. The consortium had been forced to send a new diplomat after their previous leadership was destroyed. This one was younger and more cautious. They would require fundamental changes to the galactic order. Yes, they would, agreed. That is the point. Negotiations continued for weeks, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The council agreed to every demand. Humanity became a sovereign power with all the rights and privileges that came with its status. No more begging for scraps. No more being treated as children. Earth was now a full member of the galactic community. News reached Captain on the journey home. The Horizon's edge was traveling slowly, its engine still damaged from the battle, but it was traveling and that was what mattered. Read the official announcement in his cabin alone, full recognition, sovereign power. The words seemed unreal. He had fought for survival. He had expected nothing more than that. But somehow his desperate defense had changed the entire galaxy. Knock him at his door, it was. I thought you might want company, she said. It is a lot to process alone. Invited her in, and they sat together, looking out the viewport at the stars. What happens now, he asked. We go home, we bury our dead, we tell their families what happened, she paused, and then we figure out what kind of future we want to build. Will it be better, this new future? I do not know, but it will be different, and different is better than what we had before. Ryan's Edge arrived at Earth 2 months later. The ship was given a hero's welcome, with crowds gathering at every space dock along the way, but refused the ceremonies and the speeches. He attended the memorial services for his fallen crew instead. 19 names read aloud, 19 faces remembered. The last name was spoken, he stood in silence with the families. No words could make their loss easier. No victory could bring back the dead, but he stood with them anyway, sharing their grief, honoring their sacrifice. The ship itself was retired from active service. It was too damaged to repair fully, and too important to risk on ordinary mission. It became a museum, placed in orbit around Earth, where generations of children would walk through its quarters and learn about the battle that changed everything. Returned to his research. He published papers about the Arctic technology, sharing the pure science while keeping the weapon specifications classified. His work opened doors to new discoveries, new technologies, new ways of understanding the universe. He never forgot what he had done. In quiet moments, he still thought about the Arctics and their beautiful machine. He wondered if they would forgive him for turning it into a weapon. He wondered if he could forgive himself. Now Manor was given the task of building Earth's new defense fleet. She designed ships that could work with the Collider, vessels that could project human power across the galaxy. She trained crews, developed tactics, and prepared for threats that had not yet appeared. Never talked about the battle unless someone asked directly, and when they did, she told them the truth. The fear, the confusion, the desperate hope that the weapon would work. She did not make it sound glorious. War was not glorious. It was necessary sometimes, but never glorious. And on the 440 station, someone needed to oversee the repairs and continue the research. She found herself enjoying the work. The architects had left so much behind, so many secrets waiting to be discovered. Each day brought new wonders. One day she found something unexpected. A hidden chamber deep in the station core, untouched for millions of years. Inside was a data storage device, still functioning, still holding information. He brought it to who had returned for a visit. What is on it, she asked. The device for days. When he finally decoded, his face went pale. There's a map, he said quietly. A map of other stations, other Arctic sites scattered across the galaxy. This is not the only one they built. The chill ran down her spine. How many? Hundreds, many thousands, all waiting to be found. News spread quickly. Humanity had found one Arctic station and used it to change the galaxy. Now they knew there were many more, each holding secrets that could reach civilization itself. Other colonial species heard the news too. Some were excited, some were afraid. All of them understood that the galaxy was entering a new age, an age where humanity would play a central role. Earth. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of the future. They heard stories about Captain and his brave crew. They learned about the Arctics and their mysterious technology. They imagined themselves exploring distant worlds, uncovering ancient secrets, building a future that no one could predict. Architects had been seekers of knowledge. They had built tools to understand the universe. Then they had disappeared, leaving their creation behind for others to find. Humans were different. Humans did not just seek knowledge. They sought power. They sought survival. They took tools and turned them into weapons. They looked at the universe and asked not just how it worked, but how they could master it. The galaxy watched nervously. For thousands of years, the older species had dominated everything. Now there was a new player at the table, young and hungry and dangerous. They had built tools, humans built weapons. Humanity was just getting started. The years that followed, human ships spread across the galaxy. They found Arctic stations and claimed them. They unlocked technologies that changed everything. They became the power that others feared. They also became something else. Teachers, explorers, dreamers. They remembered where they came from, the small blue planet that had given them life. They remembered the people who had died to give them this future. They built something new. A civilization that was neither purely peaceful nor purely warlike. A civilization that could create and destroy with equal skill. A civilization that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. Architects would have been surprised by what their creations had become, maybe even proud. They had sought to understand the universe. Humans sought to change it. Change it, they would have felt tired, empty, grateful to be alive but uncertain about what came next. The galaxy had changed, humanity had changed. Nothing would ever be quite the same again. That had to count for something. Then the battle would begin. 8 days remained. Seemed impossible, but then again, impossible was what humans did best. The game had changed and knew that bigger players would soon join.